Kip, what's up, brother? Great to see you. Looks like we kind of coordinated shirts. Colors are a little different, but kind of
Yeah.
coordinated. You need
Yeah.
to grow a
Well,
longer mustache, though. Outside of that, you
yeah.
look pretty sharp.
Yeah.
It's all about the porn stash or the molest stash, as it's
The
affectionately
mustache
referred.
version. So it like sticks out like
That's
5 inches from your face. Yeah.
right. This is about as good as it gets. I was noticing this morning, I'm like, bro, there is a lot of gray in here. I don't think I've caught up to you though. I
Oh
haven't caught
no.
up to you,
This
but
is
there's some
all
gray starting to show in here.
this is all peppered now. My sides are all silver. It's
You should just
official.
do a skullet. You know what that is?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You should
Shave
do
the
the
top.
skullet. Yeah.
Shave
And just leave
the
the gray and let it
just
grow
leave the
long.
gray.
Just
I'm sure
own
my
it.
wife will appreciate it.
Isn't that what they say? To build confidence, just own, who you are. That's what I say. Just own
Whatever.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, don't change and don't address your shortcomings. Just own it, and
Just be
then
happy.
you're
Just be
confident.
happy with who you are, and then life will be better. You won't feel depressed. You won't feel down. You won't
Yeah,
want to kill yourself. Like there's all sorts of things if you just accept and embrace a weaker, lesser version of yourself.
yeah,
That's what I say.
or at least just like take drugs, right, or sedate yourself, maybe, and then you could do it that way too.
Well, I've been there too. That doesn't pan out very well, but yeah, yeah.
It's
Well,
crazy, but I think this is fun. So, from a work perspective, I have to deal with. I get all these statistical evidence of what's happening in the workplace, right? Statistically
mhm.
in the US, changes in the workforce habits or whatever from a recruiting perspective, as well as like, trying to retain good employees, being competitive with other employers, as well as recruiting top talent. And a couple of weeks ago, I was reading some Gartner data about the percentage of employees that their number one issue is anxiety. And
In
it's
the
like
workplace or just in
in
general?
in the workplace,
Hmm.
and that there's this underlining issue, and it's so crazy to be in the conversations with companies about like how they're going to help in this, right? And it's and don't get me wrong, there's a level of empathy that I realize I need to have around the subject more than I naturally do, but it's also really pathetic that the approach to all of this is medical, healthcare, when in reality it's like, I was talking to my son about this last night. You're like, oh, Americans highly anxious and troubled with their first world problems.
Hmm.
It's like, you know what, give
Yeah.
everyone a book of stoicism and say, you know what, get right in your mind. It's actually a choice. And there is a way to address the anxieties that we have without sedation and drugs.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. Sometimes I take issue with like just learn more about what you need to learn more about. It's like we kind of already
Like,
know. I think
yeah, I see what you're saying. Like we got to boots on the ground. Obviously, just
that's what
reading
I'm
is not
thinking.
enough. Yeah.
A lot of people be
Yeah.
like, "Oh, go pick up a copy of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations." You've heard all the axioms and the things and the quotes, and like I've shared them. Everybody else has shared them.
Yeah.
Like I think the biggest thing that we can do is find the most challenging task that we can manage, not get through easy, but that we can manage
Manage. Yeah.
that is meaningful to you. That's it. I really think that
Yeah.
that is for men, especially. I think that is the key.
And
Find the most challenging task or activity, endeavor, pursuit that you can possibly manage based on where you are right now. As long as it's meaningful, that's what we should be pursuing.
yeah. And that will give you reps, build up confidence, generate some momentum, some learning, and all those things kind of happen once we start taking those necessary steps.
And you'll feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
That's the key, is that
Yep.
you'll actually feel good about yourself. Yeah, you'll get reps and you'll get better and you'll improve and you'll, build up a skill set, but you'll
Yeah.
just feel better about
It's the
yourself. If you got
confidence
up
side
this
of it.
morning and the first thing you did was hit the alarm and you slept in a little later and you didn't go to the gym, which is what was your first, actually waking up was your first commitment to the day. You didn't go to the gym, you didn't do your workout, or if you did, you kind of did it haphazardly and you came into work and you kind of dinked around. and you didn't do your to-do list. And then this evening, you're going to sit on the couch for a couple of hours. You're going to ignore your family. You're going to ignore taking care of yourself. You're going to go to bed too late. You spent 3 hours probably in traffic to and from work. Like, in what part of that day do you get to feel good about who you are?
Yeah.
None of it. None of it.
And you kind of shouldn't.
No, not even kind of. Absolutely, you should not feel good about that. Like, I don't know what our commitments are. And look, I'm not pointing at fingers. I fall short of my commitments, but you know what? I feel like shit when I do.
Yeah.
Or it leads to long-term problems.
Well, at least we're not on these mics lying to ourselves saying, oh, no, it's okay, Ryan. Right? Like you did what you could do, man.
Yeah.
Did
you though?
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. No. So I think that's the key. Now, whether we do it or not, that's maybe a different discussion. But I think at the end of the day, all of us know. And I think most of the questions we probably get probably have some element of that at its underlying root.
Totally.
We'll see. What are the questions for today? Should we get into it?
Well, and I think it's important to note, like, what are the repercussions if you don't? Or what opportunities you're leaving on the table when we don't? And get present to that. I think it can be powerful anyway. I like these questions. We got some good ones. So we got some questions from the Foundry, which is our membership of the Iron Council. It's the software we use within the Iron Council. Just currently closed, but we'll be open to the Iron Council soon. So if you're interested in joining with us, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. And then we have some questions from the Insta, from the Gram.
Yeah, the Gram.
At
you
Ryan
said that
Mickler.
You talked about the Iron Council like a robot or like AI would say. It's the membership. It's the membership in the software that we use. I'm like,
I said the Foundry. So I was referencing the software.
What is he
the Foundry.
talking?
Yeah, sorry.
I'm like, Kip is usually way better at this.
Yeah, hit stop. We'll start over. The Foundry is the software we use for the Iron Council. Join us.
It's where we communicate.
We're not robots.
Where we've been, where we connect and where we communicate and where we have conversations and where we call each other out. We have accountability. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, the questions that, let's get into it, but the questions that we have in on Instagram, really good questions that are going to make me pretty uncomfortable today. So I'm going to throw that out there. All right, go ahead.
I get a watch. All right, Jonathan Bell.
You get to participate.
Yeah.
You can twist the knife a little bit.
Yeah. I'll like add some twisting to the knives that are already being thrown at you.
Yeah.
Okay. Jonathan Bell. Every man has his own Everest that needs to be conquered or dragons that need to be slayed in his life, or if he is to become the best man he can be. While all men have these, every man faces unique challenges, past trauma, bad decisions, or a life that threw you a curveball. What is your advice for men to finally take that first step up the mountain or into the dragon's lair? And if you're comfortable sharing it, what is your own Everest or dragons to be slayed? If you have already conquered it or are in the process, what made you take the first step? Thank you, guys. Keep up the good work.
So I like Jordan Peterson's explanation of this when he talks about, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm going to slaughter it, but he says something to the effect of, you're going to find what you are looking for in the place you least want to look. So whatever it is you need in life, if you need to deal with physical prowess, that's found in the gym, and you don't want to go to the gym. If you want to deal with emotional trauma and baggage from your childhood, or you need that, you are definitely not going to want to journal and meditate and reflect. Like, everything that we resist is exactly where the thing that we want resides.
Interesting.
So isn't that an interesting concept?
Yeah, it is. I'm trying to self-evaluate right now. Like, what is that for me?
Yeah. Everything that you're pushing against, as long as it's a healthy activity, and we all know what are healthy and what are not, we are going to resist that. And if we can learn to overcome resisting that thing, that healthy activity, we will find exactly what we're looking for or what we need. They're not always aligned.
Yeah.
So to answer his question about, for me, at this point in my life, I really don't want to address emotional concerns. I don't want to address past shortcomings. I don't want to address where I learned certain behaviors and why I adopted those in my life. Like, I really don't want to do that. So that's what I should be doing. And I've started journaling. I've talked quite a bit about journaling over the past several months. That has been very reflective and gotten me into a place of understanding that I didn't have before. So that's been good. And really just revisiting why I behave the way that I do. I had a couple of stepfathers, and I've been pretty vocal about this coming to my life as a young boy, and I despised those men. I did not like those men.
Yeah.
And I've talked about that. And over the past 8 months or so, I'm actually a lot like those guys. And I thought that I was rejecting all of their behaviors. I picked all that stuff up.
Yeah.
And I'm not blaming them. You know, it's not my place
You're
to
an
blame.
adult now. Yeah. It's up
Right.
to you. What are you going to do with it? Yeah.
So I'm just trying to recognize where it comes from. Where does my anger come from? Where does my even passive aggressive nature come from? Where does my ego come from?
Yeah.
Where does my reliance on sedating with alcohol come from? Those are all behaviors that those two men exhibited in droves. And that's a lot of where I picked up on that. So I'm trying to, here's an interesting question I get a lot. I never had a male role model in my life. And, I'm 40 years old now. And like, where do I turn? Like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
That's a question we get a lot. And I kind of am feeling a little bit like that lately. Like, man, did I really change myself into the man that I wanted to be? And the answer is no, because I never addressed the behaviors, even subconscious behaviors, and never really got to the root of them. And so I've felt like even subconsciously a perpetual state of boyhood. And being a man is about confronting reality, confronting hardships, and maturing. And for me, my Everest is maturing emotionally. And what I would suggest if somebody's asking that question, which I know is different than the original question, is work yourself into the man that you would have needed as a young boy. If there was a better example of a man, what would he look like? What would he have taught you? What would he have shared with you? How would he have carried himself? How would he have dealt with pressure? How would he have dealt with discomfort? Envision that. Think about that. Craft that person in your mind and work actively towards becoming that person. And that's the stage I'm at right now.
That's awesome. What you just said made me think about something I experienced this weekend. Yeah, I had a lot of time thinking, right? When you're working, at least for me, when you're working physical labor, I was
in between your
doing
Star Wars audiobooks or whatever it is you're listening to.
Yeah. But so and yeah, I was doing the floors in the I almost got like 3/4 of the floors done on the second floor of the house. And so you're just pounding away, you get a system going, the boys are helping me. And I had some nephews there helping me.
Quote unquote helping.
Yeah. And it was interesting because I caught myself at one moment getting pissed, right?
Yes,
like,
of course.
You guys are wasting this flooring. You're cutting it like 10 times wrong. You know what I mean? Like, just like my natural instinct was get out of the house. You're in my way. My day is now longer because you guys think you're helping. And then on the backside of that, I'm also upset at my wife for even inviting them to help
bringing
me.
him out. Yep.
Yeah. Because I'm like, just get out of the way. You guys are highly inefficient. This is not beneficial. And I can get this done faster without your assistance. That's my natural instinct. And then I paused for a second, and luckily, right? And I thought exactly what you're thinking, like the man I want to be. And I paused for a second. I thought, man, what's the value here that they participated in building this house?
For them, you mean? What's the value for them?
Yeah. That they maybe build a little confidence. Like, even though in my mind, they're not doing a good job at all, but they look at the hallway and go, I helped build that, I did that floor. My dad never lets me do this part. He just tells me to shut up and get out of his way. You know what I mean? And I don't know, I was happy with that I paused for a second and I thought, you know what? This floor doesn't matter. In fact, not even this house matters. What matters is us right this moment, right here, placed before me, of this young boy getting some confidence that he can do something hard, and the gratification that someone believed in him, trusted him to try it, and got experience.
Yeah.
And and it doesn't happen very often. I don't want to sound like some saint, but like in that moment, I was really happy with myself. I was like, you know what? That's what this is about.
That was the right way to handle that.
Yeah. It's not about this house being built perfectly, you know?
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
To be present. I mean, too often
Yeah.
we're not, right? But that's being present in the moment to what's needed. And isn't that what we're trying to do as men, is to serve? So yeah, it's going to take you a little longer. It's going to go a little slower. The corners aren't going to be as tight. There's going to be little gaps you don't want that are there. And, you know, at what cost or what price or what investment? And there's opportunities for investment in the future.
Totally.
On that one. Awesome.
Totally. Yeah.
Cool.
And I didn't make that sound like, you know, patting myself on the back. Trust me, the later part of the day, I was just yelling at everybody. So I at least had a moment, but it's part of what you're saying is like, man, what's this way I should be being really hypersensitive to how we should be showing up.
Right. Yep.
Right. And what it doesn't mean to be a man. So, Ryan, let me ask you this. I promise this isn't me trying to jab the knife, but you said at the beginning, what were those areas that you said are the areas that you naturally want to avoid, that are those dragon, the mountain or the layer of the dragon that you naturally want to avoid?
Are you asking specifically, or are you asking me what that phrase is?
Like you gave a list. You're like, these are the areas of focus for you.
Yeah. Oh, for me personally, journaling is something I don't want to do. Sitting alone. I don't want to sit alone. I don't like that.
And that's because that's a part of being aware, like the self-awareness.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to explore that stuff. I just want to white knuckle everything, bear down, get the job done,
get some work done
through everything. I got shit to do. I got people to see and all this kind of stuff.
Got it.
So the place I need to look is in being more self-reflective, more quiet, more in tune to where my thoughts are coming from, where my behavior stem from, that sort of thing.
Got it. And so one of his questions is, you know, what advice for men to take the first step? Like,
do it. I can't.
I know, but what was necessary?
I can't do that anymore. I can't answer those questions like that anymore, because like everybody knows I'm on it. Like, and I'm trying to be like empathetic, but I'm really tired of answering that question. Like,
yeah,
how do
I get the motivation? How do I take the first step? Yeah.
You just gotta, and there are some things you just need to bear down on. Like,
yeah.
I don't need to tell you what the first step to make a hamburger is. Like, you got to go get the meat or turn on the grill, whatever you consider the first step, but you got to do it. Like, I don't need to tell you how to get in shape. You know. Now there's ways that we can look at efficiency and maximize performance and results. You know, jiu-jitsu is another great example, since we like talking, how do I get started in jiu-jitsu? Really?
Just go. Yeah.
You can't just Google jiu-jitsu near me. Like, that's too hard for you. I get frustrated with that question anymore. And it's not because I'm frustrated with the guys asking it. It's frustrating because we already know. And I see so many of us just struggling to do the thing that we know we should be doing. And you said it earlier. You just have to make a decision and do it. Guys will say that about journaling. I'll get 1,000 responses. Well, how do you journal? What prompts? Bro, just get a piece of paper or open up your computer and write whatever you're thinking. That's what I want you to do today. I just want you to write.
And part of me, I can't help but think, it's like, get over the idea that like everything that you need to do, you're naturally going to want to do it.
Yeah, true.
Like because I think that's kind of what they're asking, right? Is like, well, Ryan, how do I want to do this? So then that way I can get past the barrier of doing something that I don't want to do naturally.
Well, and I think that's okay. That's an interesting question. Like, how do I get past not wanting to? That's a more accurate, that's a more honest question, I think.
That's really the question, I think.
And if that is the question, what I would say is extend your desire. Extend it. What you're saying is, I don't want to do this right now, but what is it that you want? Okay. You want the body, you want the confidence, you want the whatever. And so how do you get past not wanting to go to the gym? You look at what you want down the road. We talked about this earlier, delayed gratification. So yeah, you may not want to go to the gym. You may not want to journal. I don't want to, but what I do want is to know where my behaviors come from. And what I do want is to make sure that I can address things effectively. And what I do want is that if at some point in the future I get into a relationship, a romantic relationship, I would like that one to be better than the way the last one turned out. I want those things. Those are so important to me that I'll do things today that I don't necessarily want to right now.
I like it. Stepan Soretta, I have wasted my late 20s. Those were golden years of lost opportunities. And now I'm trying to get back on track, but regrets of lost time are kicking me every day. How do I deal with these regrets?
Okay, another frustrating one. First, you didn't
So-
waste anything. You
Yeah.
didn't waste anything. Okay, so let's take my relationship with my wife. Was that a wasted 18 years? No. In fact, we had a lot of incredible years. We have 4 kids that came from it. We built this incredible business together. We have financial assets. We have good memories. Like none of that is wasted. Even the bad parts aren't wasted because I vividly remember those. And look, trust me, they're not fun to revisit. They're actually really painful. Some of the things that we've discussed and conversations that we've had and things that have been said on back and forth, like that's not enjoyable stuff here. But it's not wasted because I'm taking it and I'm learning from it and I'm moving forward and I'm getting better. It's only a waste if you don't use it. And so what did you learn? What did you experience? Even if it's things you learned not to do, what can you use to grow and move forward into the future? As far as getting over what was the second part of the question? Getting over is just feeling like he lost all that time.
Yeah.
So what?
And how does he deal with that regret? Right.
Like, just consider the alternative. The alternative is to not take any lessons that you've learned, to keep being upset about it, to keep wallowing in it. And then in 10 years, if we're still around, you're going to ask us the same question in 10 years. And now you're 10 years older. Like you're not getting younger, bro. We just talked about the gray hair. I'm not getting any younger. 42 years old. I don't consider myself old, but I'm getting older. And I've got today. I've got this moment right now. That's it.
Yeah. You know, here's the, maybe said another way. Here's the simple formula for you. You're okay. Awesome. You felt like you wasted your 20s. Utilize that as a catapult into showing up so powerfully today that when people go, oh, what did you do in your 20s? You're like, man, I wasted so much time. But in hindsight, I'm actually happy that I wasted my time. Why? Because it made me get hypersensitive to not wasting time in my life. And now, because the man I am today is because I learned from that lesson.
Yeah.
That's how you don't regret your 20s.
Yes, I agree. There's also a lot of should-haves that we get into, like, oh, I should have done this. I should have done that. You know how many times I've said that over the past 8 months? An infinite number of times. But you know what? I didn't.
Yeah.
I got to operate in reality. Right.
Yeah.
I should have done those things. Yes. I should have done certain things. I should not have done other things. Yes, 100%. But I didn't. What happened is what happened. And now if it's I should have done something, okay, now I change it to I will. You know, I should have done this. Okay, now I will do that. It's learning from. And we just got to stop living in the past.
Yeah, there's some power of letting go of that, you know, those expectations.
And of others too, by the way. You know, it's like I think about that with my ex-wife. I think about that with past business partnerships or people that I feel at some point in the past have wronged me. They have their agency just like I do. Like if I expect for people to honor my decisions or at least acknowledge that have the right to make my own decisions, they don't have to agree with them, but at least acknowledge I have the right to make those decisions, then I have to acknowledge that for others too. Right. Yeah. And so if you have let's say a business relationship that fell through or went south because maybe you did something wrong, or maybe they did something wrong, but you want to reconcile, you want to fix it, you want to move on, but that person doesn't want to, you're stuck if you're wrapped up in reconciliation only coming through the validation of somebody else, because they may never give it to you. And that sucks. But that's reality. They may never give it to you, and that's entirely outside of your control. Not an easy thing to wrestle with, but as soon as we start to learn that people also have their agency and acknowledge the right that they have to choose their own path, I think it frees us a little bit.
Yeah. Patrick Calhoun, how do you think Now, do you think the order of man and the Iron Council is the natural order of men to commune and learn from each other, as opposed to the dystopian nightmare and the chaos that exists today and has always been around, and the real natural order of men? I don't know if order man is the natural order, but I believe it is correct way that leads to the most freedom and prosperity for all.
Do you think that he's saying order of man as in order as in fraternity, or order as in this is the structure and this is how men should behave?
I think it's the idea of men learning from each other like we do
Oh,
in the Iron Council or listening to the podcast. That
yeah.
idea that men learning from men.
Yeah, that is the natural order of things, of
Yeah.
course. And that's why we've had so much success. Um, there's a lot of men's movements out there that are all built around a central figurehead, and it's very egocentric. And I don't think they're sustainable, because there's only one authority that, and speaking of natural order, there's only one authority that we have, and that's God.
Yeah.
So that is the natural order of things. And this is hard, and this is something I'm learning, especially on my walk more into faith lately, is to relinquish some of that control. You have a book over your shoulder called Sovereignty. And it's crossed my mind at times that I wonder if because nobody was really talking about sovereignty before I wrote that book. There's a lot of people that talk about it now. You'll hear like Jordan
Yeah.
Peterson, others talk, but I wrote that book before any of that. And I wonder if I tempted God a little bit with that one.
Yeah. There's a little, I don't think you, I
I
don't think
know
you intentionally did, but
no, and I
I
didn't.
understand what you're saying though.
And I'm not trying to like read so much into it. And I don't even know if I really believe that. I'm just trying to share my thoughts. I'm like,
Yeah.
in that book, there's a lot of truth in that book. A lot of things that obviously I believe in, I still believe in. I would say 99% of it I do, but I failed to recognize the sovereignty of God in it.
Hmm.
And I feel like maybe that was a
Some
little
credit
arrogant,
there.
quite a bit arrogant on my part. Like it's within my control. And I had, no, it's really not. I mean, there's things that we can
How you
influence, there's
show
things that
up.
we can
Yeah.
do. Yeah, for sure. But it's not our sovereignty. So that's the natural order of things. But yeah, if you were to look at, to go back to the question, throughout all of time in history, even talking about from a religious standpoint, the 12 disciples, like these guys were friends, they were brothers, they went into challenging and difficult situations together, they were persecuted together, they learned and grew together. Ancient tribes, learning from and pushing and testing. Then you get into even more modern, you get into the modern military, or you get into sports, and it has very much the same feel that we as men bond together in one of two ways: as we're working towards something meaningful. And again, it has to be challenging, because if it's not challenging, if we're doing, like knitting on Sunday afternoon, that's not going to be a real good way for us to bond. But if we're raising a barn, or building a house together, like with your brothers and your family, building a house together, that sucks. That's hard. There's things
Yeah.
that don't. And so the bonds are tighter, especially when you get to enjoy the fruits of your bond and labor. Or we are working against a common enemy. So it could be a warring tribe, against a team, against another company. I mean, there's all sorts of, or it could be against a certain temptation. Maybe it's pornography. We see that quite a bit in the Iron Council. Guys are working to break pornography addictions or alcohol addiction, and so they're bonded together over this common pursuit, which is to overcome the stronghold that temptation has in their life. That's how we as men work.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can't help but, or I can't help but look at that correlation and then look at the industrial age, where the bonding opportunity that existed before then for boys to work with their dads with this common goal of doing what? Protecting and providing for the family.
Right.
And what an immediate like role and distinction of service that was present. And then fathers, industrial age comes along, fathers go off to work. who does a young boy? Who is he banding with in a common purpose and objective? No longer dad.
Mm-hmm. Well, it
Right.
moved to mother, and then from there it moved to big daddy government by
Yeah.
going to the school system.
Yeah. Totally.
So, yeah.
All right, we're going to hop over to Instagram.
Okay.
To follow Mr. Mickler on Instagram, go to @RyanMickler. Danny Cott, during your transition from the finance world to Order of Man, you've mentioned that you spent time early in the morning and late evenings working on your passion while working on the regular job during the day. My question is, how did you manage this while also not neglecting exercise? I'm currently struggling with keeping up with my fitness and spending the necessary hours to achieve my goal while also neglecting my wife and son. Just doesn't feel like there's enough hours in the day. Thank you, Kip and Ryan.
I did neglect my physical health. Absolutely. So imagine, here's the analogy that we've used for balance, because this is a balance conversation. If you're on a surfboard and you're trying to catch a wave, balance is a verb. It's not some state you achieve. It's an active process. So if you're on a wave and you want to break left, I'm not a surfer. So like Sean Villalobos and some of my other surfer buddies are going to tear this analogy apart. But if you want to break to the left, because that's the way the wave is going, then you're going to have to shift. If you're regular footed, you're going to have to shift your weight back.
Your heel. Yeah.
You're just going to have to do that. So would you say, oh, but I'm neglecting shifting my body right? No, because your whole goal is to go left. So you are sacrificing shifting forward in order to shift backward so that you can achieve your desired outcome, which is to go left. So it's the same thing in business or in life that, yeah, there is a sacrifice to be made. There is a sacrificial offering for your goals and objectives. And you might not be comfortable with it. And if it's not, you're not comfortable with it, you get to decide. Am I willing to give this sacrificial offering? If the answer is yes, then you have to hand it over. You have to. Or you can abandon your goals. If the answer is no, then don't pursue something else. And that's okay too, by the way. Like, I'm not here to tell you that what you should and should choose, and it's not my responsibility. But there is a sacrifice that needs to be made. Now, that said, with fitness, yeah, maybe you're used to going into the gym an hour and a half every day, all day, and doing all. Yeah, that's, of course, that stuff's going to have to be sacrificed. I can't tell you can just pull out an extra hour and a half out of your ass. Like, it's just not possible in some instances. But is there a 15-minute break where you can do some body weight movement? Can you go on a run during your lunch break? Can you dial in the nutrition aspect? So maybe you're not as dialed in with the fitness, but your nutrition is on point. And these are the decisions that you can make that will allow you to drive forward and still maintain health while you're turning left, because that's your priority in the moment.
Yeah. And what's interesting, right, is like, what causes people not to do this? Well, it's not ideal, right? It's not the way I'd like it to be. It's not a gym. I have these expectations of what this should look like. And when that's not aligned, I'm going to let me throw my hands up. You know what? Just screw it. I don't have the time.
Yep.
And then we don't do anything. Right.
Well,
in
this
reality, yeah, go ahead.
That goes back to what we were saying earlier about like are you willing to actually put forth the effort? Are you really willing to do what's required? You know, it's not, yeah, you don't want to do that. I know. But what do you want more? And if you don't shift your fitness stuff, then what you're saying, and I'm not judging, by the way, but what you're saying is that my goal of starting this side business is not as important as my gym stuff. There's your decision. That's cool. Now live with it. But if you're saying to me, no, the business is very, very important, show me. Let's find out. I used to say, well, the universe will. No, God will test that. He'll say, he'll give you little challenges and ask, are you ready? If you pass this, then you're ready.
Yeah. Totally.
And if you don't, you're not. And that's okay. It really is. Yeah. But you do need to acknowledge it and be truthful about it.
I really like that analogy. And I've heard you share that before. And the reason why I like it is I use that for fuel. So I get agitated by, to be frank, stupid things that are not critical. They're not highly important, but they bother me. And one internal dialogue that I like to think about when that happens is, if I can't deal with this with the right attitude, then I can't deal with more important things with the right attitude.
Right.
And that really helps me go, yeah, I want to take on more in the world, but I can't deal with a 4-year-old. Really?
Yeah. Good
Okay.
point.
Well, then I'm not ready for that other stuff.
Yeah.
Like this is where I'm at right now. This is what I need to deal with now. This is where growth is. And once I learn that, then I can do other things, right? But I have to address these small things. And we always think that we're going to rise to the occasion, right? Like, oh, well, if I had this opportunity, I would. No, we would all fail,
right?
Because we're not ready for it.
Right. I talk a lot about this from a money perspective, actually. People be like, oh, if only I made 200,000 a year, then everything would be fine. It's not true. I have found it not to be true. You're going to be just as much debt, just as stressed out if you don't know how to manage the 60,000 you make now. Once you learn how to manage the 60,000 you have now, paying off debt, setting money aside for taxes, living within your means, then next year, I promise you, next year you're going to make 80.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's all things that we can do to increase our, I'm not talking about that. I'm saying now you're ready to make 80,000. And when you make 80 and prove that you're competent with 80,000, now you're ready. Now there's an exception to that. And the exception is momentary windfalls. In the financial world, it might be an inheritance or the lottery. And if you haven't developed the skill set, then we know statistically that you're going to blow all that money on dumb things and you're going to give it away because people are asking for it. You're going to pay too much in taxes and you're going to be right back where you were within a handful of years.
Yeah. Yeah. So much opportunity to learn and grow with what's exactly in our laps right now.
Right.
If we just take advantage of it.
Well, that's like when we talk about the business stuff, everybody's like, I'm not happy in my business. I'm not satisfied in my business. Get satisfied, be happy, like work harder, develop a new skill, like use that time. And it's so ironic. And it's also frustrating that the minute you become satisfied with your current employment, another opportunity arises.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with women. Think about this with women. Totally. I bet as a married man, you get more opportunities with women than as a single dude. It's like, why does that happen? Why does it happen that the minute that you get hitched, that all of a sudden there's these other, you're like, whoa, what's happening right now? You're not needy. You've proven that you're capable of building and developing a long-term relationship with somebody. And that energy is recognized by, in this case, women.
Other women. Yeah.
Right.
Totally. What questions is there particular questions you want to cover on Instagram, or just go?
Bring them on. There's a lot of divorce related questions.
Okay.
Bring them on. Let's talk about them all.
All right. Baker Zach 1922. I'm going to ask this with all due respect.
Giggling. You are so
I'm not
excited.
Giggling. I just, yes, I want to see you suffer. I'm just joking.
All right, let's go.
You know this, man.
I know.
Everyone knows I'm joking, hopefully.
No, you've been a good friend and a big support. And I do want to acknowledge that. I hope I've acknowledged that privately, but I think other people do need to know like how big of a friend and good support you've been.
Oh, thank you. Got a little awkward there. You want to, here, let me send you an emoji thing on the, like is there a reaction here? Hold
heart on. Emoji,
heart,
thumbs
here,
up.
Ready? Here we go.
Perfect.
There you go.
Got it. I hope that records on YouTube. A little sparkly heart for me.
Does it go away or does it stay up there the whole time?
It might just be
like a long-term heart
conversation. There it goes.
Okay. Jeez. Good distracted.
All right. We stalled long enough.
Here we go. Sorry. Okay. I'm going to ask with all due respect to you, Ryan, and please allow me to explain why I'm asking, but I'm curious if at all at some point in the future you plan to publicly address in more detail the specific problems that you've led to your divorce. I'm a huge fan and believer of you, Ryan. I've messaged you privately to express that. I asked this question not to be intrusive. I personally would never want to subject myself or my personal problems to the harsh environment of the internet. You've already shared a great deal, and I respect you for that, but I think I speak not only for myself, but other listeners of your podcast when I question the details surrounding your divorce and what may have also happened as a result of your alcohol abuse, aside from not showing up how you ought to. From the parts of your life you made public, I think it was safe to assume that your marriage would be strong enough to withstand a lot of adversity. It leads me to naturally speculate on the details. I don't like to do that. I don't want to do that. I just want to understand better. As a married man, I am curious and I may learn and hopefully avoid a similar mistake in the future. I appreciate your message very much. I mean no disrespect by offering this question to the group. I understand if those things will be kept private indefinitely.
Yeah.
Well worded.
Well, it's a thoughtful question. And here's how I would say it is that I've been pretty vocal about my own shortcomings, and I've been pretty adamant about my responsibility in the demise of our relationship. I don't think I've pulled punches. I don't think I've held anything back. Yeah, I have not got into the specifics because, frankly, you don't need to be sitting in on the conversations I have with my wife. Like, yes, I am a public figure. I acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Yes, I have voluntarily put myself in the public eye. I acknowledge that. But also, I have a private life, and I respect.
But she hasn't, right?
And that's what I was going to say is that I respect my wife, my ex-wife, that I'm not going to get into those conversations. In fact, one of the commitments that I've made to myself is that you will not hear me. This is a decision I've made. You will not hear me talk about what she should and should not have done. You're not going to hear that. Now, you might hear general things of what I think a husband and wife should do for each other. You might hear some of that, but you're never in a million years till the day I die going to hear that she should have done this. She should have done that. If only this, if only that. No, you're not going to hear that from me because that is, number one, I respect her and her privacy, and I want it to remain that way. That's important for me because we still do have children together and I still do care about her. And number two, that's not my responsibility anymore. I hate to say that, but it's not my responsibility to decide what she should and should not have done. It's not. What's my responsibility is to acknowledge what I should and shouldn't have done. And to be very general about it, I was an angry person. Alcohol magnified that for me. I was very stressed out with the thought that I had to present this certain image, and it was nice to be able to drink and alleviate myself of that pressure temporarily.
Yeah.
Those were all really good things, but it got out of hand very, very quickly. And I was angry and I was impatient and I would yell at times and I would put people down. I would make them feel less than. I wasn't listening very well. It was a lot of like interpersonal communication stuff that it just was horrible. I was horrendous the way I was showing up. Like not 100% of the time, but it was a large percentage of the time, especially if I was drinking. So I would say this, and I know that you're asking the question with the right intent, and I'm trying to give you a sincere, genuine answer. But I would also say be very careful of making assumptions because you said that it seems like, you guys had everything figured out and she would just get over the drinking or she would just get over this or she would just get over that. And I've had a lot of people say that. Well, no wife leaves because of that. There's something else. You don't know. Yeah. You don't know. You're operating on faulty assumptions. You're filling in the blanks that you don't know. You haven't sat in the hours and hours of conversations that we've had. And I'm only saying it doesn't bother me too bad because I can't control the way you feel. But the only reason I'm saying that is because we need to be careful of operating based on assumptions because we don't know. A lot of people have assumed that there was infidelity. I can confidently tell you that was not an issue. So check that one off the list because a lot of people have questioned that. So yeah, there's my answer. Be careful of assuming because you don't know. And I'll share generally and broadly as much as I feel comfortable with sharing, as much as I think will help. And I feel like I've done that. But there are certain conversations, certain discussions that will remain private, of course.
Yeah. And the assuming is important too, because I think we get into comparison traps or we think like, well, so-and-so's wife doesn't. And it's like, you don't know.
You don't know.
You assume that even wives are exactly the same or that, you know what I mean? Like there's too many variables and factors and we need to not be it's really a form of lazy thinking, right? It's like we need to be a little bit more critical and realize all the different variables that come into play, and human personalities and histories and experiences. And it's not as simple. It's just not simple like that.
But the reason that's important, let me give you an example to help clarify that. It's a silly little small example, but I think it'll illustrate the point. I got on the phone with my oldest son the other day, and he seemed upset. And he wasn't, I thought he was upset. He wasn't talking to me. It was frustrating to me.
Hmm.
And I responded in a frustrating manner because I was assuming that he was upset. Well, he wasn't upset. He was distracted. He was in the middle of doing a project. That's why we don't assume.
Yeah.
Because I just made the problem worse because I let my own insecurities slip in, which, which changed the way I would have responded to it, which created a bigger wedge that needed to be there.
Yeah. And probably did make him upset. And that was ended up being a self-fulfilling prophecy, you know?
Exactly. So that is one thing I'm trying to be very careful of. I'll give you another example though. I got yesterday, a guy reached out to me, and this actually addresses another question I saw, but he got on Instagram, and he sent me a message, and what he had said was like hit so close to home because he's going through a similar thing. And I just decided to give him a call. I don't know him. We've never talked. We've connected, I think, on Instagram. We've never talked, but I called him on Instagram, and I just talked with him. Like, I didn't want to assume what he was going through. I just talked with him, asked him questions, and shared my own perspective. And that was good. You know, it was good. It was an opportunity to serve. I didn't have to jump to conclusions about what he was or wasn't dealing with. And there was no pressure for me to perform or to coach him a certain way or for him to ask me the right questions. It was just a conversation. And that's really powerful when we get to that point. What's next?
Okay. All right. I got another one here. Why does nothing I achieve feel enough? I look at anything and I see it as well enough, could do that, nothing special.
I don't know. I have the same problem. Why does anything I do never seem enough? Maybe
Like,
we're
and that
chasing the wrong
anyone could have
things.
done it, right? Anyone could have done it. It's not special that I was able to.
Well, that I don't think that's okay. I think, like, because I think,
There's truth to that.
well, there is, and culture and society really tries to make things out to be bigger than they are. It's like, congratulations, you went to work on time. What? Like, that doesn't deserve a congratulations.
Yeah.
Congratulations, you completed the project effectively. Well, yeah, that's what I paid you to do. Like, that isn't special or unique. So I think there is a big push in society to make everybody feel special about things that really aren't all that important. But I do wonder if the reason we don't feel fulfilled is because we're chasing the wrong things. You
I
know,
have an idea.
if
I
well,
mean,
let me finish this thought right here. If you're pursuing the wrong things, then any metric of achievement isn't really all that important to you. It's not significant. And then we get so hung up on the final destination that we forget that the journey is really where the value is. And if you can do something forever because of the intrinsic goodness of the thing, you're going to be a significantly better human than chasing the next bright and shiny object. So if we're going to dumb down this example a little bit, the guy who goes to the gym because he just likes going to the gym. He likes exercising his body. He likes being strong. He likes being capable. He likes the way he looks. He likes the energy. He likes the people he works out with. That guy is going to be in better physical health than the guy whose only reason for going to the gym is because he has a race coming up. I'm not saying that guy can't do it. I'm not saying that's even bad motive for going to the gym. It's great. I'm just saying it's not sustainable. And as soon as that thing is up, then it's like, well, now I got to find the next thing. Why aren't we fulfilled in the moment? That's the question we should be asking ourselves. Why aren't you fulfilled in the moment? What are you not doing that you could be doing that would allow you to be fulfilled presently, not at some distant date or achievement.
Yeah. I read this question. Let me read this one part. Why does nothing I achieve feel enough? Well, anyone could have done that. And the reason why is because you think that the things that you're doing is going to fill the gap of feeling like you're enough.
Yeah, agreed.
And that's not the problem. And in fact, I would argue that everything that you do will not be enough, because that's not the problem. The problem isn't that you're not achieving things. The problem is that you generally don't think you're enough, period.
Enough for what, though?
Enough based upon internal dialogue that he's probably been carrying around the majority of his life. And I do
enough,
think,
but what I'm saying is like enough
I'm
for
using
love, enough for, we can't assume,
totally.
right? We just talked about that.
Yeah.
But enough for what? That's something to explore.
Yeah. When I hear that language, what I'm picking up is when I don't feel like I'm enough, it's good enough to be loved and good enough to be appreciated for the people in your life. And the reality of it is, like, if that's our mindset, then we're going to marry a spouse, and guess what? She's not going, she's doesn't matter what she does. If you don't think you're worth it and you've carried past trauma or whatever else into your life, it doesn't matter what she does. It doesn't matter what you achieve in life if you're looking for those things to fill that gap. And we're talking about something much different than just, completing tasks and being successful in life. This conversation is not about that, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard though, because we do talk a lot about that. You have to be a better protector. You have to be a better provider. You have to be a better presider. Like, those are all fulfilling things. So on one hand, it's like, you should be pursuing excellence. You should be pursuing developing new skills, proficiency, mastery. But on the other hand, as the worth of your soul, I think we need to have a better relationship with God in that aspect.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
hey,
agreed.
I don't think we're deserving of success. I won't say that. I think if we got what we deserved, I heard the sermon at church yesterday and it was really good. If we got what we deserved, we would all be in an eternal hell. So it isn't about what you deserve. If you're going to fight for, I deserve the promotion, I deserve to be loved, I deserve this, I deserve that. Well, what you really deserve is to live in eternity in hell like the rest of us. It was a really interesting concept. So if you're going to fight for you deserve the good, you're also fighting for you deserve rightly the bad.
Yeah.
So I'm not talking about what we deserve and don't deserve. I think we need to get away from that language and that thought. But you are worthy of, I think, is a better thing. You are worthy of excellence. You are worthy of pursuing something meaningful. You are worthy of having a great relationship with somebody who loves you. You are worthy of raising your children. You're worthy of all these things. And now we just need to mirror that person we could be, the worth of who we are as souls, with our actions and get those things aligned.
Yeah, I like that. Simon Tony 4, how to stay consistent with one vision. Thank you for everything that you do.
Well, I think your vision should be a little dynamic. I think if it's so rigid that it's going to be hard for you to stick to it, because things in your life are going to change. External circumstances, internal feelings, things that happen along the path are going to change. And if your vision is so stiff and brittle, it's going to snap at the slightest little inconvenience or redirection. So that might be a little bit of what's happening here, is that you're getting stagnant. It's getting boring. You're not maybe that interested in it anymore. And that's okay. Your vision should change then. I'm not saying we just change it willy-nilly whenever we feel like it or things aren't working out. I'm saying that if like the vision no longer applies, then we've got to adapt. I'll give you an example of that, since we're being honest about all of my wrongdoings here. Is my vision has always been to be a great husband. Well, guess what? That's not in the cards today. Could it be in the future? Yeah, sure. I imagine at some point it probably will, but it isn't now. Yeah. And so my vision has changed from good husband, good father, partly, to, well, scrap the good husband. Now I want to be a good partner and still a good father. And so my vision of being a good partner with my ex-wife for her and for our children changes the way that I behave and show up, as rightfully it should.
Totally.
So your vision changes.
And we've changed, right? Like, can you imagine if I held on to the vision I had at age 30? I'd be like, idiot, stupid vision, right? Like, I'm not even the same person, right? So it needs to evolve with us, of course.
I've had people say, well, Ryan, you're saying this now, but 3 years ago, you said that on a podcast. Oh, right. That was 3 years ago. Of course I think differently. And I'm not saying I'm even better in a lot of ways. I just think differently. Some things I've nailed down a little bit better, and some I've taken a path way off where I should have been. But we're human. And so we learn and we evolve. Like, we are actually changing. You're changing as a result of listening to this. You and I are changing as a result of having these conversations.
Totally.
If you are saying the same thing that you were 3 weeks ago, let alone 3, 10, 15 years ago, what in the world is going on?
Yeah, not a good sign. Yeah.
Yeah.
Alex Gibbs 8. My job has a potential strike coming up in August. I have the savings set aside already, but what are some other things I may not be thinking about that I need to do to prepare? Additional context: I have a wife, 3 girls underneath the age of 8.
I would go back and listen to Friday Field Notes. He said it's coming up when? He thinks a strike
in August.
That's so weird. I don't understand the striking thing. Like,
well,
you're planning a strike. I know.
Yeah.
It's like, we're going to plan a strike in August. August? I mean, you're clearly not that upset about what's going on then.
That's a long timeline to plan out. Yeah.
That's weird. Hey, we're going to strike in 6 months. Why?
Now,
what's happening in 6 months?
To all credit, we're laughing, but like, you're talking also to 2 West Coast guys that are like, we don't have unions out West as much as other parts of the world. So whenever I hear like union things, I'm like, I don't know what are these guys talking about? Yeah. They're more prominent.
Is it manufacturing? Is that why?
Yeah, I think so.
Blue collar
the
manufacturing
trades
stuff.
And the trades usually have a lot of unions, but they're not prominent as prominent out West.
That's such a weird thing. To me, that's just politicking. Like, I don't know the details, but there's backroom deals that are taking place, politicking, jockeying for more money from your union bosses. That's what's happening.
Let's change it. So his job
I know
may be at risk 6 months from now. He has good savings. What are the things, Ryan?
Why are you taking me off of the subject of unions? That's what I want to know.
I just want to get some good content.
I don't understand unions
for Alex here.
I just do not understand unions. Okay. So what I would do is, what I was going to say is, go back and listen to Friday Field Notes from last week, because I talked about starting a business. That's what I would say. You've got the money set aside. Be good frugally, financially, get your wife on board, let them know things are going to change, that kind of stuff. But you've got 6 months or whatever the timeline is to maybe create some additional revenue. And there's some pretty good strategies and tips in that last Friday Field Notes.
Okay. Let's see. Andreas.
You're union, aren't you? You're union, Kip.
No.
That's why you wanted me to stop talking about it.
Yeah, you're talking bad about unions. You're going to hurt my membership. What's your current belt color in Jiu-Jitsu?
I'm a blue
Andreas
belt.
wants to know. Blue belt. Represent.
Kip's a black belt. He won't say it, so I'll say it.
Okay. Next question. Fan White. What role do you think religion and faith has in being a man and raising children?
I think it's crucial. I haven't always been great at this in my life, but I think it's crucial. Again, it just goes back to the natural order of things. Like, if we're not leading from a place of universal and powerful, time-tested, eternal truth, then we're building our leadership capacity on a faulty foundation. So if we're building it upon man's word, well, it's flawed. Like, if you guys placed me, for example, up on some pedestal I didn't belong, and in light of what's going on in my personal life, if everything around you crumbles, that's because you built your life or your well-being on a man. And that's not good. We need to build it on eternal truth. And then if that's the case, then we can be principled people and we can make decisions based on not what's expedient today, but what is good over the eternal length of our existence. And you can make that. I've talked about this. Expand the time horizon. What's the maximum time horizon you can expand? Eternity.
Yeah.
So if you're faced with a difficult decision today, for example, with work, and an employer is asking you to do something that goes against your ethics or morals, if you're like, hey, I got to put food on the table, and that's your only concern, probably going to make a compromising choice. If, on the other hand, you think about the eternal perspective, then this is a very small part in it. And the way that you show up actually matters. So if you look at all of the greatest martyrs to ever exist, and this could be Jesus Christ or maybe Martin Luther King. Obviously, there's controversy in men. Okay, I know, but you look at martyrs. What did they do? They died for what they believed in. They believed in it so much that they said, I'm willing to give my life. It's so principled. I'm willing to give my life because what you're asking me to do, I cannot live with myself if I do.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful. That's conviction. That's an eternal perspective.
Yeah, totally. Dex Reese, what's the best? And I like this because it lines up to the conversation earlier. Maybe I should have snagged this question earlier, but what's the best between he says, what's the best, but I think he's looking for a different word here. What's the best between God's sovereignty and a man's responsibility? How do they both coexist?
Yeah, ultimately, God is sovereign. He's in control and authority over everything. And we are players in the game. And we have a duty and responsibility to play the game correctly. Yeah. We have a duty and responsibility to serve other people. We have a duty and responsibility to show up powerfully. We have a duty and responsibility to make ourselves very capable. We have a duty and responsibility to serve others because that's what he's asked of us.
Yeah. Totally.
And it's his game board. We're just pieces.
Years ago, I had a conversation with one of my older brothers, and we're talking about, man, this is probably like even 20 years ago, talking about a difficulty of strengthening a testimony in God and believing in God. And this was his conclusion, but he says, Kip, I think we Sorensen boys struggle with this concept because we missed having a father involved in our lives. And by having a father in your lives, it helps you understand God better.
Yeah,
because so when we have good dads, then we can see God that same way and say, okay, I get that. And that's one of the most powerful ways that I always connect to that concept is just like a dad, right? Giving my boy agency. Why is that so important? Because I see value in him struggling with that, right? Like, hey, Dad, I really want my blanket. This literally happened yesterday. He left his blanket, he sleeps with a blanket at night, and he left it, doesn't know where it is. And he's crying. And I'm like, hey, you got to get that blanket. Well, I really want it. I'm like, okay, I'll help you. Where do you want to go? I'll look downstairs. It's not downstairs. All right. Where else could it be? It's in the car. I don't want to go outside. Well, if you really want that blanket,
you don't get the blanket.
You're going to have to go outside, but I'll go with you. Okay, let's go outside, right? And by the time we couldn't find the blanket, he decided he didn't want it anymore because it wasn't worth the price, right? Like he didn't want to go keep looking in other cars. He didn't want to go look out in the backyard. Like, you know what I mean? It was like, okay, you know what? I don't need it.
Yeah.
And it was a great opportunity for me not to rob that from him.
You stole his blanket, didn't you?
I actually did not. I had no idea where it was. I did selfishly did not want to go look for that blanket. So I'm like, you little sucker, if you want this thing, you're going to have to get it. But there was opportunity there, and it was great. And agency, I didn't force it.
Yeah.
Agency. He said, you know what? I'm going to go to sleep without that thing. And it was his call. I didn't command and control. It was a choice. for him that I luckily had the right mindset not to rob.
That's really powerful. There's another thing I was thinking of here. And then if you have some time, I want to get into some of those divorce questions because I think it's
let
actually
me
going to
scroll
help a lot
down
of
why
people.
you do that, and I'll
Yeah.
find some more. Okay.
The other thing I was going to say about believing in God and his sovereignty is that when things aren't going well in your life, it's good to know that it all can be used for good. Because if you didn't believe that, I think you'd have a really hard time wrestling with the trials that life has to offer, whether they're by our own making or external circumstances. It would be really, really difficult to deal with that. But knowing that he's going to use, I'm not saying he's going to manufacture events, although he can, I believe, but he's going to use events in your life for good. And what that allows a person to do is to see it differently and behave differently. It allows you to see your circumstances on a longer term and to see it with a glimpse of hope and not entirely despair.
Yeah, I like it. I got a couple good ones here. All right. Ryan Daniel Moran. How has going,
not Moran.
Moran?
Yeah. Okay. I know Ryan. He's a good dude.
Okay.
We just don't want to call him moron. That's
did I
all.
say moron?
Moran? I think you did.
Moran. Sorry, Ryan. Okay. How has gone through a divorce changed the way you view other areas of your life?
I've thought about some of these questions because I saw them ahead of time. This one's a good question. It has given me a new sense of empathy that I don't think existed before, especially for people going through the same situation. I just told you, a guy messaged me on Instagram. Normally I would, I don't know, write something back that wouldn't probably be all that profound or direct him to a podcast or something like that, you know. But I decided to take a more personal approach because I know what he's dealing with, know what he's experiencing. And so that's allowed me to show up in a more powerful way for people than I think I have been able to in the past because of my ego and arrogance. I can see people a little differently. I'm way more forgiving and understanding of even just behavior in people. Like I was driving down the road today and I failed to merge correctly onto the freeway. It was my fault. I failed to merge correctly onto the freeway and a car behind me honked at me. And it was this like soccer mom in her white minivan. And she raced past me and flipped me off. Normally I'd be like, yeah, flip her out and do the whole thing back. It's kind of funny actually. But I'm more light that way. Like I don't care about, I don't know, maybe she has to go pick up her son and take him to the hospital because he broke his leg. I don't know. That's probably not true, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. And so doesn't thinking that allow me to have a better attitude towards life? Absolutely. So I see that people are really struggling with certain things, and I don't need to be judgmental if people are being, you know, assholes, for example. You know, we get a lot of that on social media. It's like, I don't know what that person's dealing with. I had one example one time. I had made a post, this was years ago, about working hard or doing something and staying in the fight, something like that. And this guy wrote back and he's like, come on, bro, all you do is, you know, sit around on your computer and ship orders. Not that hard. Some of us are out here working 12-hour days, just being kind of a dick. Yeah. And I wrote back and I said, hey, man, like, first, I commend you. Sounds like you're doing awesome work. This was a moment of clarity. They didn't have them very often back then, but I'm like, hey, I commend you. You're doing awesome work. Not all of us work the same or do the same job, but I don't think it's wise to compare your hardship towards mine and vice versa. We're all dealing with different things. I said something like that. And months later, I didn't think anything of it. Months and months later, he wrote me back and he's like, hey, man, I wanted to apologize. I said something on a post months ago about, and he apologized. It's cool. And it was cool. It was really cool. I didn't judge him at the time. Again, it was a momentary glimpse of clarity for me at that time. And I didn't judge him, but he was really going through some stuff. If I remember correctly, I think he had just got laid off or something was going wrong at work. Totally. It's like, that's what we need to do a better job of.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I've had a crazy, like, super mean. I actually didn't reply. I was just like, okay, this guy's having a bad day. And no joke, like 3 weeks later, hey, really sorry about that. I was having a really bad day. I was lashed out. Yeah. You know, appreciate you guys. And I'm like, Oh, good thing I didn't retaliate. You know what I mean? It's like it would have never been helpful.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another way that it's helped in my life is I'm definitely a better father than I've been in a long time.
Yeah.
Way more present with my kids, and not just one of them, all of them.
Yeah.
Way more present with them, way more focused on them. Uh, it's definitely I've definitely had to be more efficient with my work schedule. That's a silver lining. Like I still
Yep.
get the same amount of work done, if not more, but I'm way more efficient and effective because of the schedule and picking up the kids and dropping them off and taking them here and making dinner and taking care of the house and doing all the things that used to be two of us. Now it's just me doing half the time.
Yeah.
That gets to be a struggle. So I've had to learn new ways of being efficient, learning new skills like cooking, some of the stuff. So it's impacted a lot of my life. In like obviously not a way I'm grateful for, but in a lot of ways, like it's gonna make me a better person. It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Matt Nickov, how do you not let resentment and feelings of betrayal influence your communication with your ex-wife?
This is a conversation I had with the gentleman yesterday because he was feeling that.
Yeah.
And of course that's gonna come up.
Yeah.
But and I don't know your wife, and so I can't really assume, but here's what I know is that my ex-wife is an incredible woman. And at times I might feel that way. And if I feel that way because I know her, I've been with her for 20 years since we were kids. I know she's not making decisions just kind of like randomly, flippantly, and just kind of willy nilly and not really considering all of the angles and perspectives on this.
Yeah.
Like,
Totally.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to afford her some grace in what she may be experiencing. It's hard. Sometimes we think, well, this is what she wanted. So like she's getting what she deserves and she's got it easy. I don't think she has it easy.
Yeah. She's struggling too.
Of course she is.
Yeah.
Think about the changes in her life. And that's what I try to remember is I try to put it in the
Totally.
context of what she might be experiencing. And that I think that would be harder. I know that would be harder if you had somebody who was vindictive or manipulative or angry and contentious with you. I don't have that. So speaking to that wouldn't be something I could speak to from experience, but it's just a decision. I think you said that earlier. Like, I'm not going to allow that to happen. I'm not going to say it doesn't come up. It does. Of course
Yeah.
it does. But I'm just not going to allow it to occupy much of my thoughts and instead replace that with thoughts of care, thoughts of concern, thoughts of partnership, thoughts of what's long term in the best interest of our kids, just better thoughts that I'm deliberately deciding to pursue.
Yeah. I failed at this when I first got divorced 100%. Like I was bitter, I was pissed, I was angry. It wasn't until I actually got present and had some empathy for the struggle, the suffering, and the pain that she was experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And really, in essence, it's just understanding. It's understanding that, like, back to almost what we said earlier, understanding people, right? Like they're going through hardships. Does she feel neglect? Yeah, probably. Does she feel lonely? Does she feel like she wasted her life being married to me? And now look at her. And now how is she supposed to move on with two boys and no guy's ever going to want to marry her? And who knows what stories that she's come up with and how this is aligned with never being good enough in her life. And she's just lashing out because she feels hurt. There's a lot of power in me having some empathy and understanding. And in essence, once we get to that point, not only can we see them for who they are, but we can also like have some compassion and properly let go. Because the other side of this is if we hold on to that resentment and that feeling of betrayal, you're not letting go of that relationship because you're using that resentment and betrayal to justify your current state of being. Mm-hmm. And you're going to perpetuate that story and that victimhood in essence forever. And that's going to affect future relationships. So you
Totally.
want to let go properly, you got to let go of that resentment and betrayal. Yeah.
I'm glad that you said that, because I think there's probably a contingent of men who listen to this podcast who might, as we were talking about that, be rolling their eyes and shaking their heads and saying things in their mind of like, beta and cuck, you don't know, my wife's a bitch and she that, and she did this and she did this and she deserves what's coming. And there's probably a contingent of men like that.
Yeah.
And I understand that. Okay. I do. I understand that.
It's
But
the easier path.
maybe now it's easier, right? This goes back to the delayed gratification thing and lengthening out our time frame. Maybe easier it's now. It doesn't get easier, I think, if we behave that way. In fact, it makes everything worse, I think.
I agree.
So what I would say is that it isn't a beta move to be empathetic towards other people, even if they're mean and nasty and vindictive. I'm not saying you need to expose yourself to it. I'm not saying you need to open yourself up to be hurt more than maybe you already are. I'm saying it's not a weak or a beta or a pussy move to be empathetic. In fact, you use the word powerful. I would suggest that it's powerful. We talk a lot about sovereignty. I would suggest that doing that is way more powerful. It takes way more courage and it takes way more strength to behave with kindness and empathy and class when that person maybe isn't entirely deserving of that. And I want to be clear. I'm not saying that about my situation. That's not what's going on with my situation. I'm explaining a situation I hear a lot about.
Yeah.
That to me is, if we're going to use the term beta, that to me is an alpha move, because you're taking control of your life. You're taking control of your thoughts, of your emotions, and of your freedom moving forward. And that's the most powerful thing you can do. Not let somebody you hate have more rule over your life than they ought to.
Yeah. Lone Papa, how are you managing the grief of losing your marriage at this point?
I that's a hard one at times, not always, but at times it is. I do try to maintain what I have, what I still do have. And I've got 4 incredible kids. I've got a pretty decent relationship with my ex-wife. We've got the business that we've built and assets, and I've got learning experiences. But yeah, sometimes like I'm just sad, and or like might even cry for no reason. Well, for what I think, like, why am I crying? Like, and if you want a good resource on this, I would suggest look into Jason Wilson. He has a lot of information on this, but sometimes we do just need to cry, and that's okay. It's a time that is appropriate and a time where it's not, but there are times that are appropriate, and you do have to do that. One thing I'm being very aware of is making sure that I have activities and friendships that I can maintain, but I'm not using those as a sedation method for feeling sad. Because I could do that. I could just occupy myself with friends and activities and projects and events and travel. That doesn't allow me to process the sorrow and sadness. And so when people ask, I think, anyways, when people ask, how do you overcome feeling sorry? What they're saying is, I don't want to feel sorry anymore. So what can I do to shut it off? And I would suggest that maybe the best thing that we can do is let it play out so that we can get over it and move on with some confidence. Not now, not today. That's not the season, but at some point it will be.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. I have a hard stop. You want to do one more?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I thought right now, or you have a minute or what?
Pretty close. I got okay. Probably about one more question.
Let's do a fast one.
All right. What advice would you give someone struggling with self-confidence and what others' perception of him is?
Others' perceptions of you go away when, and I'm just going to refer to a previous question, when you align your actions with your sense of worth. If your actions are out of integrity or you don't believe you're worth anything, then you're always going to be seeking validation from other people. So you got to fix one of those two things, or both. You have to either have to start believing that you're worthy of the best in life, not deserving of it, but worthy of it. Yeah. And then you have to be doing the things that move you towards that. If you hit those two things, the opinions of other people are significantly less relevant because you don't need it. I don't need somebody to validate me. And that's a beautiful place to be.
Yeah.
Can I answer just one more, Kip, on this?
Yeah, for sure.
One more. So somebody asked a question about, and I'm just paraphrasing that, how can I still do this? And is it tainted? And they're asking in a sincerity, like, when you don't have this figured out, but you're giving advice, and, you know, is that going to affect or change? And should people still listen to you? Something along those lines.
Yeah.
Valid question. Valid question. And what I would say to that is that I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to tell you things that I don't know. I'm not going to say that I have things figured out that I don't. All I can do at this point is say, here's what I would have done differently with the information I have now. Here's what I wish I would have done. Here's what I'm actively doing to work on. And that's the thing I'll share with you. So I can't share with you that I know how to have a successful, lasting relationship. Clearly, that's not the case. I'm lying if I tell you that. I thought that I did, but I realized that I did not. So I'm not going to make claims that aren't true. And I'm going to just act in truth. And you can take from that what you will. If you decide that, oh, that's valuable, great. And if not, I understand. But there was another part of that question, if I remember correctly. And he's like, is the mission tainted, or is the message or the mission tainted? No, it's not at all. Am I?
The same mission?
Yes, yeah. I am. Yes. Yeah. Like my influence is diminished, but is the mission? No, because the mission is not me and I'm not the mission. I'm the messenger, and I failed to implement everything I shared with you in an adequate way in my own life. But does that make it any less true? Ask yourself that. If I apply everything that Ryan has been talking about, or somebody else maybe that you follow, is your life going to be better? And the answer, of course, is objectively yes. It's going to be better. That's separate from whether or not I was always able to live up to that. So yeah, my influence and credibility is diminished, but the mission and the message still on point, and your life will be better. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I think it totally makes sense.
I just have a lot of trust to build back up. So
yeah, well, and real, right? And that's what's nice about it. It's no smoke and mirrors. You know what I mean? And I think we've always stayed pretty true to that, of like saying it the way it is, and not, beating around the bush. So I appreciate it, at least.
Do you need to go and I can close out, or?
Yeah. Or no, I mean, I can close out. I just have a hard stop in 3. So,
okay. I will say one thing, Kip, about one thing I wanted to share, guys, the battle planners, which I've got mine right here because I look at it every day, but the battle planners are back in stock. So, and available. So if you go to orderofman.com/TWBP, 12-week battle planner. So orderofman.com/TWBP, it'll take you to the store where you can get the battle planner and you can get inserts as well.
Excellent. Sounds good. And then, like we mentioned earlier, to learn more about the Iron Council, orderofman.com/Iron Council. And of course, connect with Mr. Michler on Twitter and Instagram at Ryan Michler. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it, Kip. As always, appreciate you. Great questions, guys. I think we have some leftovers, so we'll get to those next week. But until then, go out there, take action. Let's become the men we are meant to be.